these things.
With people putting the live comments? Or?
Yeah.
There should be a small.
I wonder who this person is. I assume it's the same person. Because they're always the same idiocy.
It's like a button that looks like a text bubble. We usually turn it off before maybe they changed YouTube since
The doc.
No.
Okay. Okay, we're in the middle of learning the 3 different levels of mitzvahs themselves. Right? We said that mitzvah, the doer of the mitzvah, so a person can do mitzvahs by rote. What does that mean? So the Rebbe talked about that in actually a rather positive way. Tachtan Shabadim, that his nefesh Bahamis naturally does mitzvahs. Then there's mitzvahs mitzad, the nefesh Elokis, which is Ava. And then there's mitzvahs mitzad, the Ratzon of Kadosh Baruch Hu. That was Dalet. In Hay, the Rebbe started talking about the mitzvahs themselves. That, so to speak, mitzad the Eibishter. Why did the Eibishter give mitzvahs? So there's mitzvahs mitzad the Tachtan, the Tzadach ben Esabriyos. It's good for us. It's good for us both, so to speak, physically and spiritually. Physically, I don't mean physically it makes us strong, meaning, but then the context of everyday reality makes you a better person, etc., etc. And that was the interesting pshat in the rest of the Medrash, which isn't quoted here, but we saw it in Leitzim Shekela. Whether you shech from the front or the back. So shchita, the way we do it, is much easier for the animal, so that creates a person who has a little more empathy for the animal. Right? So that's the Litzadach ben Esabriyos. It happened to be at the chasna. I was sitting next to someone whose son went to learn shchita in Venezuela. So he went to visit him, and he went to the Schlachthaus, and it was a Schlachthaus used by Yidden, Muslims, and Notzrim. And so he watched the Yidden, and then he was interested to see what the Muslims do. So a Muslim guy came with a knife. He said he picked up the knife that he had from the wedding. He said the knife was no sharper than this. Right? He said some sort of benediction, and then he started sawing away. The animal was screaming and yelling, and it took quite a while to get through and kill this poor animal. So he went up to him afterwards, and he said, "I understand. Are there any laws about your knives?" He said, "No. Just have to make a benediction. If I make a benediction before, so then it's kosher for halal." Okay. So he said, "Okay, if this is the Muslim, what's the Christian going to be like?" So some guy came, and this way, it wasn't like this was religious shchita. It was just, they were just killing the animal for the people who weren't Jews and Muslims. So he was banging it in the top of the head with something, stabbing it in its head. And the thing was moaning and groaning and screaming and until finally it just dropped dead. So he said it was really interesting because he'd always heard that shchita was rather humane. And then he saw what else was going on, and he was quite astounded. Right now, there are better ways of doing it. I mean, I think in some places they have some rod that goes boom and just wipes the thing out immediately. Some places they shoot the thing. But all in all, shchita is generally, as it goes, an easy way for the animal to die, if there's such a thing. So there's that, but there's also the ruchnius of it. And then the fact that what we do aligns us with the drachim, with the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, was the second level, that we emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu by virtue of doing the mitzvahs. And then there was the third level, which is the ratzon. The advantage of the third over the second is that that's a state of achdus. The second level, so all the different mitzvahs have different expressions and different ways of bringing down Hamshach into Eilam Hazeh. And they're called the Darchei Hashem, the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because there might be an expression of Chesed, an expression of Gevura, etc. Whereas Ratzon is Ratzon. Ratzon is beyond any Hischalkus, beyond any differentiation. It's all the same. All the mitzvahs are equally the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is what the Eibishter wants. Okay, I don't think we finished the paragraph, but did we? Maybe we did. I think we did, actually. Yeah, we did. We finished the paragraph. Right? So those are the three different levels of the mitzvah itself. And the Rebbe also explained that if the effect of this on the person, the effect of the second level is that gives the person chayus. The person have chayus in the mitzvahs if they realize the mitzvahs of the Darchei Hashem, and that's the way they cling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that'll give them chayus. You're alive. How are you alive? By virtue of connecting to the Eibishter. Third level, the person realizes that what is it that ultimately gives him his existence? The ability to fulfill the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when he fulfills that Ratzon, mitzad echad is completely bottled. Mitzad sheni, actually, his existence is of importance. It's importance within the context of his connection to the mitzvah, the one who commands. Okay. Val derech ze gam b'limat Torah. Right? There's going to be three different levels of limit Torah also, similar. It's also going to be three different levels of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. So that's going to be Zion. Well, there's three different levels of learning Torah. Mitzad the Tachton, Mitzad the Elyon, and Mitzad the Eibishter. The nice of Gimmel Lefanim Sheishnim of mitzvahs Talmud Torah, and Talmud Torah is a mitzvah, so every mitzvah has it. A person, why does he learn Torah? I don't know, he just learns Torah like he learns Torah because that's what he's been doing since he was a kid. He learns Torah because he wants to express Ava. He learns Torah because it's the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to learn Torah. Okay, so that's the mitzvah of Torah. But what about the Torah itself? The nice of Gimmel Lefanim Sheishnim of mitzvahs Talmud Torah, to bechol mitzvahs, like all other mitzvahs, as we saw in Daled. There are these three different levels of reality in Torah: Tachton, Elyon, and Etzem. When a person learns Torah, mitzad the chokhmah, mitzad the intellectual interest, that the Torah is your wisdom and your understanding. Even, the pasuk says la'enei amim. Now, even in Einei, not also for us. The Torah is also something very interesting and exciting to learn for us. Why? It's fascinating material. It's very amazing stuff. A lot of interesting stuff, which is true. Limud Torah Shalei Hu Mitzad Teva Gufa V'Nafshe Tivis. So he's learning Torah Mitzad is Nefesh Tivis. That what? You will notice here the Rebbe's not calling it Nefesh Bahamis. He's calling it Nefesh Tivis. Shebetivai Hu Ohev Muskalos. That his nature is that he likes ideas. Now, there are people who aren't particularly interested in ideas. Okay, then that person's not going to learn Torah. Mitzad is nefesh hativis, right? But there are people who find ideas interesting. They like information. Okay, so Torah is also information. It's nice. It's good information. It's good to know. You have to know how to keep Shabbos. You have to know all sorts of stuff. And when it's learning Torah, it comes from this place. Shetara hi memutza. I'm sorry, this is the second level. Ukeshalim b'Torah shelo mitzad zeh shetara hi memutza is an intermediary. If you remember, we talked about three different levels of kesher, of above and below. There's the or that's mevatel the lamato. There's the mashpia and the makabel. So the mashpia, so to speak, is mevatel himself in order to connect to the makabel. And then we said the third level, which would come up later, is the mamutza, the intermediary. Somehow they meet in the middle. Right? Connects the two of them. So the Torah can be seen as that. It's an intermediary. That connects the Jewish people with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Like the Zohar says, Tlas ksharim miskashrin da bada. That's very interesting. It says three, because really it should be two. Simple shot, right? Two knots, two bindings connect this with this. So if there's three things being connected, you only need two bindings, right? Between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, right? But there's also a connection of 3 and 1. So there's a third knot, so to speak, meaning it's circular. It's not linear. don't know when this croaky throat is going to go away. I sound like a real Yerushalmi, like an old-time cigarette smoker, was macht for Yid? Oh, yeah, alles is good. Der Eibishter is good. Yeah, alles is good. Kemaimers are plus ksharim iskashim dabada Yisrael araisa v'kuchibrichu. Am Yisrael, the Torah, and the Eibishter. And what's the simple pshat in all of that? She Yisrael miskashrin ba'araisa, that Am Yisrael connects to the Torah, and by virtue of that, heim miskashrim b'Kadosh Baruch Hu. So they're connected to the Eibishter, like Tanya, right? Fifth parak in Tanya. You want to connect to the Eibishter, so learn Torah. Limit Torah shalom mitzad neshama. So that learning is mitzad neshama. He wants to connect to the Eibishter. How do you connect to the Eibishter? You learn Torah. So he wants to connect. So it's not simply that Torah is interesting. Torah is also God. So he wants to connect to it. I knew. Shegam oifen zeh b'limit Torah. But even this level, hu mitzad mitziyusay, is an expression of his mitzias. Not in a bad way, but existentially, it's still mitzad, I want to connect to him. Shiyeh kashur b'Kadosh Baruch Hu, that he should be connected to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Elashua mitzias the neshama, but it's the mitzias of the neshama, which is a mitzias of bittul, but it's still a mitzias. Right? The neshama wants to be connected to the Eibishter, mitzad the neshama's reality. Also mitzad, so you have the neshama's teva, right? Now, not, right? Meaning the neshama, Baruch Hashem, the teva of the neshama is really quite an astounding teva. It's a godly teva, but it's still the teva of the neshama. There's a higher level. Good timing.
Yeah.
Just a little late. You could have just wiped out that one too. That's okay. It's like taking off tight shoes. Right? The Zesha Loimed Torah. Not because of the loftiness that will be to him by virtue of this. But mitzad the Torah. Why is he learning Torah? Because the Torah is the Torah. What does that mean? The Torah is the Eibishter. And not that he wants to cling to the Eibishter. Not mitzad my desire to elevate myself, which is a wonderful desire. That's not a bad desire. But still mitzad me. There's a level beyond that. Why does he learn the Torah? Because the Torah is the Eibishter's Torah. That's that. I'm elevated. I'm not elevated. What difference does it make? Right? It's the Eibishter's Torah. That since the Torah and the Eibishter are one, furthermore, it's one with the etzim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not simply an expression of the different aspects of revealed godliness, but it's actually one with the etzim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How do we know? K'maimer Chazal, famous Chazal, that's quoted in Chassidus all the time, especially around Shavuos, obviously. Sha'anoichi, anoichi of Elokecho. What's anoichi? Anoichi is Rashi Tevis. Ana nafshi kasvis yavis. I myself wrote it, gave it. It's Gemara in Shabbos. Now, what's Pshat? I myself wrote it, gave it. It's not I myself wrote it, gave it, but I have given myself in the writing of it. The ana nafshi, I myself, who atzmus is barach. Right? Ana is the Eibishter, atzmus, which we sound like some shekela, first person. Upeirush ana nafshi kosvis yavisu. It's not simply I myself wrote it, which we know taka from Leisim Shekela, but rather what's the pshat, and this is based on the Alter Rebbe, as you can see below. As hat reingeschrieben und reingegeben sich allein. He's written himself and given himself in it. He puts himself in the Torah, puts Atzmus in the Torah. So when I sit and learn Torah, what am I doing? Connecting to Atzmus. Not so I can relate to that in two different ways. Wow, I'm so elevated by virtue of me connecting to Atzmus. Or I can relate to the Torah of it, not the me of it. Right? Again, not that the me of it is grub and disgusting, but there's a level beyond that. There's a level where it's not about me. It's about the Torah itself. The Torah is God. The Torah is holy. The Torah is etzim. And so what does a person want to do? He wants to connect to the Torah because the Torah is the Torah, not because I'm elevated by that connection, because the Torah is good. And just therefore, just like a Kadosh Baruch is not an intermediary, a means for any other thing, right? I can turn that Kadosh Baruch into that. I can turn a Kadosh Baruch into a means to my ends, right? But that's called Shalei Lishma, and I'm doing it for me. Kadosh Baruch Hu, the idea makes my life meaningful. Kadosh Baruch Hu elevates me. Kadosh Baruch Hu allows me to connect to the lofty reality, and that's very good, and that's nice, and that's healthy, and that's uplifting, and it's what all those amazing things, and it's all true. But then I might, to a certain degree, be turning a Kadosh Baruch Hu into a means to my end, right? But the Eibishter is not an emtzoi. It's not a means to an end. The Eibishter is the Eibishter. Einu chas v'shalom emtzoi le'ezer inyan acher. V'tachlis hu bei ba'atzmai. The ultimate purpose is him himself. He's the tachlis. He's the end. He's not the means. Al derech zeu gam b'limudat Torah ha'adam. So too, when a person learns Torah, shenirgesh etzlai. When a person feels while he's learning Torah, shatachlis the limudat Torah shalai. Torah atzma. It's the Torah itself. Why are you learning this? Because it's Torah. But what does Baba Basra got to do with anything you're ever going to do in your life? What do I get? What's it got to do with anything? What does Baba Basra got to do with life? Baba Basra's Torah. Baba Basra's atzmos. That's the source of life. Am I ever going to be someone who's... do I own a courtyard and am I going to be dividing it up and building walls? It might be, actually, right? It might actually happen, but it might not. And probably, in all fairness, if it does happen, I'm going to go to a Rav and ask him how to do it. I'm not going to remember, oh yeah, I was in Gimmel here in Mayanot and I learned the first parak of, and I'm going to paskin halacha based on what I learned in the first parak of Baba Basra. Don't do that. Go to a Rav, right? To go to a Rav and ask the Rav, I have this thing with my neighbor and and it's, build a wall. Oh, can I build it out of guzzis? And he'll go, what the hell is guzzis? What's guzzis? So, it says in the Gemara guzzis. He says, I know we don't have guzzis anymore. We do. It's just submit. Okay, guzzis. Build out of guzzis. I want to build out of levanim. Right? Okay, build out of levanim. Good. But no one builds out of levanim around. Everything's made out of wood. There's no bricks. But I want levanim. Can I build it out of mesipis? A mesipis balma? I want a wall that's mesipis balma. I'm going to go to my neighbor and say, okay, I agree with the wall, but it has to be mesipis balma. And he'll go, I don't know what you mean there. What's mesipis balma? Yep. He's a yipper, right? If he's a yipper, so then you're going to have trouble convincing him to have Mesipis Palma. Right? Trump is going to build a new wall. When he gets reelected, he's going to build a wall of Mesipis Palma. It's all going to be Mesipis Palma.
It's a compromise.
It's a compromise, Mesipis Palma. They don't want a wall. He does want a wall. Build it on my side. I shouldn't be doing this, but I can't hold myself back. Someone showed me a great quote last night. Someone said, the only people whose lives are better after 4 years of Biden are illegal immigrants. That's about right. Right under it was a picture of a newscaster with a graph behind him going 38%. He said, who are these 38%? Right, so to speak, people who are happy. Right? Anyway, someone must be. Someone's making money on something. Right? So, Ana Navshi Kosvis Yavis, what's Torah? Torah is the Eibishter. So why does a person learn Torah? Because it's the Eibishter. Right? Now, obviously, we get mixed up in there. Right? There's no that obviously happens, right? And so I'll be happy that I'm being kaveh eating the Torah, And I'll feel good that, okay, Seder, I made another Seder, and I'm accomplishing certain things, and I'm finishing certain things, and that's also good. I mean, it's a good idea. I take upon myself a certain, a challenge to finish something. Okay, so I'm going to start it. I'm going to finish it. That's good. That keeps us going, and it generally encourages us to sit and learn, etc., 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 etc. And but I mean, we do have to be honest when we say that. Who we're talking to? I'm talking to my Nefesh Bahamis, to get my Nefesh Bahamis to be there all the time, because I took upon myself something, and there's no question. It's easier to sit and learn if I have a certain project that I've taken upon myself. Therefore, if I have some time, I'll open up the Sefer and continue my project. Whereas if I don't have a project, so then it might be that I'm sitting there with a little time, and I by the time I figure out which book to open, the time is gone. Okay, there's no that's all true, right? So those things work, but I also have to be realistic and say, real with myself, and that's being realistic in terms of the project. I also have to be real with myself and say, hold on a second. The bottom line: why does the Eibishter want me to learn Torah? Because the Torah is Him. Not just to learn Torah because the Torah is godly. Right? That's the bottom line. Why are you doing it? Not even because God said so. Right? He also did that. Right? He also said that. But on a certain level within the context of God said so, and we'll see this later in the Mimer, I can satisfy the God said so by certain criteria that are limited. Right? And I could even theoretically finish the Torah. Theoretically. Right? I could finish the Torah. I could learn the whole Torah. Right? Okay. I could learn all of Shas and all of Medrash. Right? All of Tanakh. If I'm learning all of Medrash, that means I've learned all of Tanakh. Right? Learn all of Shas, I've learned Shulchan Aruch, all of Torah, all of Shulchan Aruch. Okay. All of Rishonim. Is that theoretically possible? Yes. Not only theoretically possible, there are people who've done it. Now, every single book ever printed? No, because they just printed a new one. But I mean, that one doesn't count. Right? All everything written up until, forget about Chassidus for a second. In Nigla, everything written until 1850. Could I learn it all? Yeah, why not? There are people who have. Right? Does that mean they stop learning Torah? No. Why are they learning Torah? It's there. Just learn it. That's the third level. Because it's the Eibishter. It's not only Stam the Eibishter, it's Atzmus. Stam the Eibishter. Al derech zu gam b'limud Torah. The Adam shenirgesh as shetachlis the limud Torah shelo in Torah Atzmus. And I can remind myself of that before I learn Torah. That which he knows that the Torah and the Eibishter are one. And in the fifth parak of Tanya, the Rebbe is talking about connecting to the Eibishter. It's not talking about this level. This level's there. But in the fifth level of Tanya, the Rebbe is talking about the second level more than the third. Not that the second level is bad. Every level in all of this, not that there's a bad level and then a slightly less bad level and then the good level. They're all good. They're just higher and higher. That's all. Even in mitzvahs. Rebbe related to doing mitzvahs by rote in a positive way. But there's something higher. The person knows that, thinks about that, contemplates that. Pale love that causes that he gives himself over to learning Torah bli kol cheshbonus, without any cheshbonus. Not even the cheshbon that by virtue of this will connect to the Eibishter, which is the fifth parak in time. Ultimate bittul. What's he bottled to? The Eibishter. But with the Torah, it's the Torah. The Torah is the Eibishter. It's learning Torah. Again, mamish, why? Because it's there. Because the Eibishter gave it Torah. And what's in that Torah? The Eibishter's in that Torah, so he doesn't learn Torah. And it's really interesting, because therefore it doesn't matter what he's learning. Right? Relative to myself, there's going to be certain things I'm going to learn before. And that doesn't mean this is wrong. And if you're setting up a curriculum for someone else, so you're certainly going to set up a curriculum in which the person is learning information that's seemingly more important for their life than the information that's less important for their life at this point. Okay, there's no question about that. Right? And so a person, if he sets up his own curriculum, would do the same thing. But that doesn't mean that learning something that has no particular relevance at this point is not just as much Torah as anything else. And he has to learn Nigla and he has to learn Chassidus. Right? We learned that in the Yom. And if a person doesn't learn Nigla, can't understand Chassidus. If a person doesn't learn Chassidus, you can't understand Nigla. Just learned in a Yom a few days ago. Right? There are people who just want to sit and learn Chassidus all day. Right? They'll learn Nigla because they have to, like they'll be Yetzirah. Well, the Rebbeim don't think that way. Right? If you don't know how to learn a page of Gemara in some way, and at least have developed an ability to understand the argument, even if it's in the context of, obviously it's best without art scroll, but even in the context of an art scroll, and so you can understand the basic arguments and appreciate what's going on the page. So then a person's Yiddishkeit is going to be lacking. Right? Now, Baruch Hashem, most educated people can do that, but they have to do that also. Art scroll's fine. Art scroll is done. Art scroll's brought that possibility to all sorts of people who, for whatever reason, didn't have the possibility of doing it when they were younger, or when they were younger they didn't pay attention, or whatever it was. Right? Okay, it's fantastic. Right? 100%. Because they will develop a certain appreciation of how the book works. And so their Yiddishkeit is different. Nigla is important. Chassidus is important, because without Chassidus you don't understand that Nigla is God. I think it's just the first thing, a bunch of interesting information. Once heard someone say to me that learning Gemara is intellectual push-ups. Without Chassidus, that's what you'll say. Intellectual push-ups. Now it is, there's no question that it's incredibly good for the brain and 100%. That's what it is. It's the Eibishter. These three different levels of limud Torah, where do they come from? Gimmel and Yonim Shabbatar Atzma, from the three different levels of Torah itself. Torah hi chokhmah v'seichel. Mitzad echad, the Torah is the chokhmah and the seichel of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's no question about that. V'hainu shehi chokhmah shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu yardav v'nislav sheb'seichel adam. That it's the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that has come down and been clothed in the intellect of a person. And the Torah is a mamutza mekasher Yisrael b'kudsha b'richu. And the Torah is also the intermediary that connects Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's no question about that. But the Torah is also the Eibishter, Mamish. Those three levels are true. So Mitzad is Chokhmah, so that's his revealed reality. The Torah is a function of revealing certain aspects of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The fact that the Torah is a mamutza between us and him, it's also true. But then what's the Torah ba'atzim? So now the Rebbe says, relative to the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, they were just talking about the Torah itself. Now, yes, of course, the Rebbe always, by definition, is going to relate it to the person learning the Torah. But then there's also the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. The obligation to learn Torah. So there's different levels of that obligation. A person can fulfill that obligation by learning a little halacha in the morning and learning a little halacha at night. It's true. But there's also, what am I learning? Oh, so I have a chiyuv to learn halacha. Why? I have to know what to do. The chiyuv lilmod halachas etzrichis l'maisa, the obligation to learn halachas that are necessary for maisa. One thing, it's become a thing now. I don't know, you guys probably don't know about it because you're stuck in this little bubble called Yeshiva. But when you're trying to recruit students, you hear about it all the time. You also see it when people leave here. There's a big thing now. People who don't know how to learn Torah, but they're learning smicha.
What?
Oh, it's a big thing. Yeah, they've created smicha programs, so you basically, you don't even have to. You can do it in English. Okay, so there are a number of guys that I was trying to get to come to Yeshiva. So they might have been here for a 3-week winter program, a 5-week summer program, mamish ad kedei kach. And what are they doing next year? They're learning smicha. Okay, wow. So what we just learned about Torah has nothing to do with what they're doing. Where are you going to learn to appreciate Torah that way? In one place only, that's sitting in Yeshiva. You're never going to appreciate that aspect of Torah anywhere else. Because by definition, it's going to be utilitarian, right? Because, it's going to have to be that way unless you're living it 24/7 for a while. Right? And even if you live it 24/7 in a while, it doesn't necessarily penetrate. But there's a chance it might, right? But you can't get these people into yeshiva. Why? Because they've never been in yeshiva and don't appreciate what Talmud Torah is. So what's Talmud Torah? I have to learn a bunch of information. I'm going to learn a bunch of information. That's the first level, right? It's interesting, right? It's a bunch of interesting information. I'm going to learn the information. It's the first level here too. Learn halacha. I'm going to learn the first information. I'm going to learn smicha, and so then I'm not an imparts. I'm a rabbi. Guy couldn't find a bab metzia from a Yavamis. I don't know whether I should put this on here, but there's an old story with Rabbi Soloveitchik, who was a character. He was learning something, and he asked one of the guys to go out of the room and go get a Gemara Nida. He just said, go get a Nida. No. So someone walked in with the secretary a minute later. He said, no, the Masechta. He screamed. I assume he knew what was going on. That was just his personality. But someone wouldn't know what's this, what's that? They're a rabbi.
There's Chabad ones.
What's the? Well, the Rebbe definitely said people should get smicha, so it's become okay. Potato smicha is a good thing to do. After you sat and learned for 2-3 years ago, sit and learn smicha, no problem. But in place of learning Torah, it's not the idea. It's not what the Rebbe has in mind. It's not what the Rebbe has in mind. And what's missing? What's missing is an appreciation of Talmud Torah. What the Rebbe is talking about here. That's what's missing. Where do you get that? You get that by sitting and learning Torah. Seeing what Torah is all about. Seeing the unbelievable serious nefesh of Rava and Abaya and Rav Sheshis and Rav Huna and Rav Chizda. That they're just dying to figure out what's the emes and what pshat is and what pshat in the pasuk is and what the halach is and how it works and what, right? Everybody takes it for granted, like, oh, that was their job. It was their job. These people were Baruch Hashem, they set the table for us by virtue of doing all this incredibly hard work that they did. There's the obligation, and this is an obligation, to learn halachas tzrichas l'maisa, right? A person has to learn halacha, to know what to do. Right? In order to know that which has to be done. And this aspect of Talmud Torah is as applicable to women as to men. This aspect of Talmud Torah, women are chayav. Women have to keep halacha, so women have to know how to keep halacha. Women have to know how to keep a kosher house. They have to know Hilchos Shabbos. They have to know all sorts of halachas. Hu al derech limud Torah shemitzad teva haguf v'nefesh hativis. That's limud Torah mitzad teva haguf v'nefesh hativis. Because what's it all about? It's all about the acting of me in Olam Hazeh in Gashmi. Mikevan shasiyas mitzvahs, the performance of mitzvahs. Kela mitzvahs atliyas b'dibur, even those mitzvahs that are dependent on speech, right? Learning, davening. Well, you're there, goof and nefesh chayim. I'm doing it with my body, so I certainly have to know what to do. The chiyuv the mitzvahs yediyas Torah. There's a second level of mitzvahs. Mitzvahs yediyas Torah. There's a mitzvah, and this is shaykh to men, not to women. There's a mitzvah leida kol Torah kula. It's a mitzvah to know the whole Torah. Kol inyan shem shrichim l'maisa. All those things that aren't necessarily shaykh l'maisa. You have to know hilchos karbonis. Why? Because it's part of the Torah. I am not bringing karbonis. Bezrat Hashem, we will. But even when we will, Lav Dafka, I'm going to be part of it, because if I'm not a Kohen, I'm not necessarily going to have to know very much about Ilchus Karbonis. But say, I'll have to know certain things that I have to know as a Yisrael or as a Levi or whatever I have to know. Fine, but I mean, Mamish Ilchus Karbonis, I imagine the Kohanim are going to have to learn a lot more than the rest of us. Say the way to sprinkle this, and where to sprinkle that, and where to put this, and where to put that, and what to burn completely, and what to cook so that people can eat, and all that. Say that. So we will have to have a cursory knowledge of that, and they'll have to have a complete and total knowledge of that. Say that. But that's mitzad the Maisa Sheyas. That's mitzad what actually has to get done. But what about the chiyuv to learn the whole Torah? The chiyuv to learn the whole Torah? Every man has that. So what's one of the ways you can fulfill that? Learn the Rambam. Learn Rambam every day. One pair, 3 parkim. You learn Rambam every single day. You'll get through all of the Taryag mitzvahs and the 7 mitzvahs, the Rabbanan, you'll understand them all, at least al pi halacha. Now, you have to, it's going to take a while. You're not going to get it, I'll do Rambam for 1 year and I'll figure it all out. No. Just keep doing Rambam, keep learning, right? And sooner or later, the whole Torah will be something that you've encountered and understood on some level. Completely and totally. No, there's always more. I'm saying I'm going to keep doing it. I'm not stopping. Right? Where's the 3 chapters a day program is ending very soon. Probably next week sometime. Exactly when we are in Hilchos Mamre, the end of Sefer Shoftim. Kevan she'inyana shel mitzvah zu, the whole idea of this mitzvah. Hisha adam yeda es Torah, that a person should know the Torah. Now, a person will say, well, I'm not so smart that I'm going to be able to cover all that ground. And okay, Seder, you just keep learning the Torah and keep learning the Torah and keep learning the Torah. And if you run out of time, so you ran out of time. Seder, that's the Eibishter's fault, not yours. Right? Just keep learning. Right? Is it a nice thing at some point to finish Shas? Yeah. Daf Yomi, the Rebbe was not a big fan of Daf Yomi. Right? Why? Well, because then I turn it into, I want to finish the page as opposed to enjoy the page. Just, got to get to the end of the page. So that's a funny way of learning. Even though the Rebbe, interesting enough, did that with Rambam. Did even worse, so to speak. Right? But the Rebbe explained why learning Rambam is an important thing to do. Because Rambam is the one book that contains all of the Torah, and if all of the Jewish people learn all of the Torah together, that will hasten the coming of Mashiach. And that's why the Rebbe said we should learn Rambam. Right? So it didn't have anything to do with Talmud Torah per se. Right? It had it was obviously that too, but it had a purpose in mind. Uniting the Jewish people through Torah. And Baruch Hashem, there's hundreds of thousands of people in Rambam every year. Not just Lubavitchers. Lots of people in Rambam. So a person should, at some point figure out, somehow try to see as much of Shas as they can. And all of this, what? This is mitzad the neshama. So the neshama wants to know the Torah because the neshama learned the whole Torah and forgot it all. So wants to learn it all again. So there's that level. There's the level of learning the Torah mitzad elam hazai gashmi. That's Allah. There's the level of learning the Torah mitzad the person. But the person has a neshama and a goof wants to learn the whole Torah because that's one of the chiyuvim that they have. V'yesh leimer, shezeu atam al zeh sheyesh shi'ur v'kitzvah. For this reason, there's a measure, la mitzvah yediyas Torah. Right? There's actually a measure for the mitzvah Yediyas Torah, meaning it to a certain degree is limited. The Mashakos of Arucha Mi'eretz Midah, that which it says the Torah is longer than the world in measure, meaning it's immeasurable. Hu she'ein kates la'omek tamei halachas, that there's no end to the depth of the understanding a person can come to, the reasons and the understanding that a person can come to, conceptual. Aval halachas atzman, but the halachas themselves, it's the beginning and end of Shulchan Aruch. You can learn all of Shulchan Aruch. You can cover all the halachas in Shulchan Aruch. You just start in Aruch Chaim and you can end up in Yoreh De'ah and you've learned it all. It's quite an undertaking. But is it possible to learn all of Shulchan Aruch? Yes, of course it's possible to learn all. There's a certain amount of pages. Can you come to the deepest understanding so that you can say, I finished? No. There's no end to that. You can always understand it on a deeper level. But can you start at the beginning and get to the end? Yes. That you can do. Aval halachas atzmam, the halachas themselves, v'chein medrashim, medrash, unfinished medrash. Can you finish Medrash Rabbah? Yeah, it's a beginning and end to Medrash Rabbah. Can you finish Tanchuma? Yes, beginning and end to Medrash Tanchuma. Psiknet Rav Kahana, Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, the Sifri, the Sifra, the Mechilta. There's a beginning and end to all those books. Yesh Lem Kates, U'Mispar, they have an end, a number. V'hayu kama v'kama, and there are a number of people, Shalamdu v'yedu, kol Torah kula, that learned and knew the whole Torah. Rebbe was one of them. Frierdiker Rebbe said about the Rebbe when he told people to go meet the Rebbe, when the Rebbe came from Europe in 1941. People knew that the Rebbe had a son-in-law. The Rebbe said, there is not a Jewish book printed that my son-in-law doesn't know about peh. That's what he said. Go meet him. And he told him he's going to look. You're going to be surprised the way he looks. Because the Rebbe had a gray hat. A gray coat. Right. The Rebbe was completely incognito in France, completely. Right. The Rebbe taught a shir in Gemara in France during the war, the beginning of the war. It was hard to come by books. It's a famous story. But no one knew the story until two of the Reichman brothers were in the class. Right. And they became very famous businessmen in Toronto. So one of them told the story that they had, I think there were 3 or 4 students in the class. They only had, let's say there were 4. They had 3 Gemaras. So Rebbe gave them a project for the next class. But they only had 3 Gemaras, so they couldn't all do the project. So they asked if they could borrow the Rebbe's Gemara until the next class. So then they'd each have a Gemara, and the Rebbe said no. He was sort of shocked that he didn't seem like the kind of guy who would say no. Okay. So once they were learning, and the Rebbe went out of the room. So they decided, because the Rebbe always held his Gemara like this. They couldn't see the Rebbe's Gemara. They looked at the Rebbe's Gemara. It wasn't the Masechta they were learning. He didn't have one. But he didn't sit there without a Gemara. He brought a Gemara and pretended that he had a Gemara the whole time. But they were learning Rosh, Rif, Rambam, they were, going in the back. Didn't have the book. But you didn't want them to know. No one knew the story. They told the story in the late Mems, early Nuns, that story came out. The Reichmans made it very, 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 very big, and they wanted to come see the Rebbe, and the Rebbe wouldn't see them. The Rebbe wouldn't let them come. They were supporting someone who was a very negative influence on the Jewish people. And they were very, very heavily supporting him, and the Rebbe said, "Can't come see me." They were very upset. So then somehow, in the context of all that story, so they told this story that, don't think that we don't appreciate who the Lubavitcher Rebbe is, because we learned with him in Europe. So we didn't have the book. Right? So a person can learn the whole Torah. Kimikev and Sham mitzvah Yediyas Torah. Since the mitzvah Yediyas Torah is, just finished the paragraph. Sha'adam Yedas Torah, that a person should know the Torah. Va'adam umugbal, and a person's limited. Lachin Torah, so to the Torah. Sheshayachas lemitzvah zui medida v'agbala. So there's a limited expression to this Torah. So there actually is a limited. Obviously, for you and I, it seems unlimited, beseder, but there is a limited amount of Torah that theoretically a person, if they had nothing else to do and they just sat and learned all day, they could finish the Torah. Now it's sort of daunting to us, like, how am I going to do this? Okay, beseder, but is it possible? Yes, it's there, right? V'achiyuv, but there's a third level. Then there's the v'achiyuv of agisa b'yem and v'layla. Involve yourself in it. Agisa is like the word magia, means to edit, hagah, but it means to, contemplate it all the time. V'agisa b'yem and v'layla. Think about it all day long. Right, so if you just look in the first line in footnote 70, right, Rabbi Boruch Kaplan, the Alter Rebbe, the mitzvahs, Yidiyas Torah, mitzvahs, Vagisa B'yem, Shnei Inyanim, they're two different things. There's an advantage to both. Vagisa B'yem and V'layla, love dafka, you're going to get to everything. Yidiyas Torah, if you got to everything, you got to everything. Whereas Vagisa B'yem and V'layla, love dafka, you got to everything. On the other hand, Vagisa B'yem and V'layla is unlimited. This is not, but here the Rebbe says, right? After you finish the whole Torah by next Pesach, you're still going to have a mitzvah v'gisa b'yem v'layla, even though by next Pesach you'll finish everything. That's the project, right? By next Pesach you should finish all of Chassidus and all of Nigla. Okay, Beseder, Shavuos, give you the next couple of weeks. Val derech zeh b'nageh la'elo shadaitem ksara. Oh. Right? What about those people whose knowledge is limited? And they won't get to the whole Torah. Right? So those people also can be Makayim the Inyan V'gisa B'yem of life. They should learn all. V'gisa B'yem of life means every spare moment. It doesn't mean all day, because a person might have to go make a living, right? Some people do, some people don't. Right? At a certain point in most people's lives, they're busy making a living. V'achiv the lim Torah mitzad Torah atzma. V'gisa B'yem v'layla is to sit and learn the Torah because the Torah is the Torah. It's not a matter of finishing it. It's just there. So that's the third level. And that, interesting enough, is expressed in the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Vagisa b'yem v'layla means every spare moment that Jew sits and learns Torah. Now, he has a spare moment, he's learning Torah. That's Vagisa b'yem v'layla. Right? Now, that's very helpful. The Rebbe gives us a big break with that by giving us what do people do? You see Lubavitchers waiting in line in a bank. What are they doing? They're learning Rambam on their phone, right? Instead of just like sitting there, getting Friday. So Friday is always a hard day to get Rambam done. Just a hard day. So I went shopping Friday. So I was 40 minutes in line in the supermarket. I went the wrong time. Okay, fine. Finished Rambam, waiting in line in the supermarket, leaning on my cart. It was actually quite comfortable. Mamish finished. I was second in line when I finished. Baruch Hashem. My kids were wondering why I was so calm Friday night after dinner. Right. Finished Rambam. Usually Friday night is, falling asleep over Rambam after dinner. No, sat, schmoozed, had a good time. Since the Torah, in terms of itself, the Torah is beyond limitation. The Torah doesn't have a beginning and an end. The information in the Torah has a beginning and an end. So the Yediyas Torah has a beginning and an end. It's actually. Look, Shas. You can finish Shas. Now, is a person going to, there's no question, the Rebbe already said this when we talk about Yediyas Torah, am I going to necessarily have as deep an understanding as possible in everything I learn? No. Could I learn Yavamas again and understand it more? Of course. But did I learn Yavamas? Yes. Do I basically know what's there? Yes. Do I remember everything? Okay, so that's a problem. I should. Let's say I do. I remember everything. I can go through Shakla V'Tari Yavamis Bal Peh. Okay, is there more to learn in Yavamis? Of course. Why? Because there's a deeper understanding and another way of understanding this the Peseder. So that's V'Gisa Yemam V'Layla. There's no end to that. There's also no end to the involvement in that. As long as I'm alive, there's no end to the involvement in that. Right? I'll bring two people just so I can be an equal opportunity employer. Of Moshe Feinstein, they say he memorized Shas by the time he was 16 years old. They say the Rebbe memorized by the time he was the same age, basically 15, 16. The Rebbe knew Shas. Okay. Balpeh. So now Rav Moshe Feinstein lived into his 90s. That means he was learning Gemara for 75 years after he knew it Balpeh. What do you think? He didn't learn Gemara every day? Of course he did. What was he doing all day? I once asked Rabbi Kaplan, what does the Rebbe do in the office all day? He said, well, there's letters. I said, I know, but what does he really do? He said, he learns. Sitting and learning for hours. What's the Rebbe doing in there? Learning Torah. What's the Rebbe want to do? He wants to learn Torah. He's running the whole world. He's also running the world. He's also learning Torah. How can he run the world if he's not learning Torah? He's sitting and learning. That famous story what Pekarsky told. Pekarsky was the Ger Chassid, who was the Rosh Yeshiva in Lubavitch in 770. He's buried here in our Melukat. So he used to come to spend Simchas Torah by the Rebbe. I think he would walk from Borough Park. I don't know if he stayed in Kreinitz. Maybe later in his life he stayed in Kreinitz. I'm not sure. But he would be Simchas Torah by the Rebbe. And he lived in Borough Park. So he once followed the Rebbe upstairs after Simchas Torah. Simchas Torah is 50 plus hours straight of non-stop. Right? There's Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah and then Keshel Bracha at the end. So it's who knows what time it is, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, whatever time it is. The Rebbe walks upstairs and goes into his office at the end of it all. Non-stop activity. And a Sukkot Bechlal was non-stop. But Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah times 10. Okay. So he followed the Rebbe upstairs and he wanted to know what was the Rebbe doing. He's not going home. He went into his room. So he tried to peek through the keyhole. And he could see. The Rebbe took off his hat. I think he also took off his jacket. I'm not sure. He put his hat on the table. Reached up. There's people who say they even know it was a Gemara. Sanhedrin, a Gemara Sukkah, that I'm not sure. Took down a Gemara. Sat down. And he said it was, you could see. The Rebbe opened up. Started learning. 50 some odd hours straight, busy with all of us. What does the Rebbe want to do? Just want to sit with the Eibishter and learn Torah. You sat down with the Eibishter and learned Torah. He said you could, so it was almost audible. It's quite a place to be, right? So that's Vagisa B'Yom V'Layla, and that's the mitzvah Vagisa B'Y. That's just what you do all the day when you have free time, and that's also the mitzvah of the third level of the union of Talmud Torah, of Limud Torah. L'chein gama mitzvah to Talmud Torah, so to the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, kameshi mitzad ha-Torah atzma, as it is mitzad the Torah itself, he sheyaseg beitami, is that a person should involve himself in it always, yemim v'layla, b'chol rega panui, in all free moments, l'mayla miyudid v'agbala, beyond limitation. Okay, so looking for note 72, and we'll stop with that. Ba'af, even though Shemavur be'ilchas Talmud Torah Sham, even though the Alter Rebbe when he's talking about Hilchas Talmud Torah says sheyesh kama ifani b'kiyum mitzvahs v'agisa, there are different ways of expressing the mitzvah of fulfilling the mitzvah of v'agisa. Ba'ad, to such an extent, shebashas etchak, in times of pressure, kayim mitzvahs v'agisa al yidei kriya shema shachris v'aravis, can even fulfill it by saying kriya shema in the morning and the evening. These differences in fulfillment of this, it's when he's very involved in making a living. And he has to spend all this time making a living. It's not that he's doing it because he wants to be richer. He's trying to put food on the table. But regarding free time, which a person might not have very much of, but if he has free time, a mitzvah de vagisa, so the mitzvah vagisa is every moment. Now, what does that mean? A person doesn't sleep? Of course, the person sleeps. Has to sleep. Has to sleep in order to do what it is that he has to do. So, okay. Say that. Almost done. Well,
Thank you. Thank you both.
quite astounding.